There's been a lot of talk recently, a lot of people asking me on social media about Tom Segura, and he is a fellow comedian, and he's a very unique man, and he has a great podcast called Your Mom's House, and he made fun of Louisiana. He was making fun of Louisiana in one of his comedic sets, and he was talking about Louisiana and build a wall around it. And he talked about, he used the word retarded, and there's just been an uproar about it, and a lot of people asking me how I feel. And you know what's funny is, before I even knew that this was on television where people could watch it, or on Netflix where people could watch it, I heard Tom do that bit. I heard Tom do that set at the Comedy Store a couple of months ago, and I'm sitting in the back. And dude, my first feeling was that I was offended. I'm like, man, what the fuck, dude? You're gonna make fun of Louisiana? Why don't you make fun of one of these, one of these show-offs, one of these know-it-all places? Why don't you make fun of a Los Angeles or a New York, or a California or New York? Make fun of a know-it-all kind of place. I'm like, you're picking the lowest hanging fruit there, Tomcat. And then I'm watching, I'm like, and then I realized I have a part in my Netflix special. There's a bit where I make fun of Mississippi, which is an even easier place to make fun of. So that's when I realized, you know what? Like, this is just jokes. Even though it might first hit me a little bit uncomfortable because that's my home state, that these are just jokes. I mean, I could go, I could raise rebuttal up forever. Louisiana Purchase, one of the greatest deals ever in the universe. We did that. You're welcome. Okay? Bought most of America for 10 cents an acre. Boomtown. I could say that. I could say that, one of the pseudo birthplaces of jazz. I could say that we've had, a lot of amazing people come out of Louisiana. I could say, some of the greatest recipes. Dude, come on. They got some trout. They have some trout down there that if you eat it, that one of your deceased grandparents could probably get that taste in their mouth, even in their skeleton wherever they're laying. They could get that taste in their mouth. And so that's when I realized, you know what? I could rebuttal, but the thing is that it's jokes. And that's Tom's take on it. And he said, build a wall around Louisiana. And so that's his take. And that's it. And I just have to, I got to realize some things are just jokes. Especially because if I start to question, what, I can say if I think it's funny or not. But if I start to question what he should be able to joke about, it's like, come on. And especially in the South, we should be able to take a joke. There's a lot of places that cannot take jokes. But I don't think that the South is one of them. And Tom has to go down there and perform. And I'm not going to, people are asking if I'm going to be his security guard down there, if I'm going to be down there opening up. Not that I know of. But good. And I wish Tom the best down there. I wish him the best. A lot of famous people have been killed. And even if somebody shoots him up, a lot of famous people have been killed in Louisiana. A lot, man. Huey P. Long, Pistol Pete Maravich, Steven Seagal, Jim Croce, Larry Sweeney. There you go. So, it's anybody's ball game down there, Tomcat. Good luck. Good luck. And but I'm not. I can't be offended. So I have to. I think we're almost getting in living out in Los Angeles, and even just being in this world today. It's that offensive that it's becoming that culture. It even infects me, because I wouldn't usually get offended, but my first thought was to be offended. And I think my reasoning was I just feel like that the South and that the Midwest, these places have been picked on enough. But then when I look at my own work, even though I'm from one of these places, here I am picking on it. So it just, at that point I just got to realize that Tom's just telling jokes. And then it made me think, well, maybe I should find a braver place to make fun of. I mean, at least he picked Louisiana. I picked Mississippi, which is even, which usually it's like you go down, like every state makes fun of another state. Like, oh, yeah, well, North Carolina's like, oh, well, you think we're shitty? What about South Carolina? And South Carolina's like, oh, well, you think we're shitty? What about Kentucky? And Kentucky's like, oh, well, you think we're shitty? What about Alabama? And it keeps going. But then you get to Mississippi, and Mississippi's like, oh, you think we're shitty? Well, and they don't know because there's no other states left. But then also you go to Mississippi, man, and you find some people that you got a lot more weight. You go to some of you go to some of these southern and midwestern states, man, you have so much more good-heartedness. You have so much more people actually living their lives and getting to know each other, I mean, Los Angeles, we sit in traffic. Everybody acts like it's so diverse out here. Like, yeah, there's a lot of different types of people, but it's not like they interact all the time. Everybody's, for the most part, seems to be in traffic, driving to their own little insular universe. Like, there's a lot of, there's little neighborhoods where everybody's kind of very similar. It's just like then we go into our homes and talk about how, and people talk about how diverse and how loving they are. But I've known my neighbors way less when I've lived in Los Angeles than I have any other place that I've lived in America. And that's true. I've known my neighbors more in other places, including New York City, South Carolina, New Orleans, Arizona. I knew my neighbors more in those places than I have living here and I've been here for probably about 13 or 14 years. Now, I'm not saying there's not great things about California. I'm not saying there's not great things about Los Angeles, but as a place where there's a strong sense of community, anybody who tells you that there is, I think, is not realistic. I think it's very me. Everything is very me out here. And I don't even know why sometimes. I don't even know why I feel that way or why it is that way. I actually met a man on the street earlier, and this was like the first time I said, yeah, hey man, I live right down the street at this address, and if you ever need anything, if you and your wife ever need anything or whatever, I'm down the street. And I just realized this was just tonight when I went on this run. I was like, man, I've never even said that shit to anybody before. So I don't know. I mean, the only time I had a neighbor at one of my old places, and he had husbands or men. He, preferred the pleasure of men. And they used to get up there, and sometimes, dude, I'd be laying in bed at night listening to these men make love kind of in the distance. And damn, sometimes it was, it didn't make me erect or anything like that, but it was probably the most I ever even knew my neighbors, really, in a weird way. It's probably the closest that I got to knowing any of my neighbors was sometimes listening to this man who used to make soap. He also made soap. He was a soapsman or a sudsman. I don't even know. I could look it up on my internet's having trouble. I would listen to him, and he had a couple of different partners, I think, but that's his shit, dude. That's his life, but that's weird that was kind of the closest thing I felt to neighborly association was listening to a couple fellas moving furniture, if you will, a couple of lunch hunters, people hunting, just getting into the dark arts out there.